This episode of PedalBox, it's been a long time coming, but we're finally working on the Thunderbird, and we're going to take you on a quick tour. So this is my 1966 Thunderbird, which debuted on PedalBox in episode 13, only 7-ish months ago, which frankly seems like more than a year back. And I bought this sight unseen on eBay, had it drop shipped to the house, not really knowing what I was going to get. And actually, it looks an awful lot better than it did in some of the pictures. Still this really nice blue in most of the places. We'll just ignore the bonnet. But we're going to get this back on the road and running. I've been collecting parts mostly so that we can do a lot of work to it. We need to rebuild the brakes, but before we actually get into building it, let's take a quick tour and look around what I actually bought. So the car itself spent most of its life in Pennsylvania, came out of the Michigan factory in '66, and it's fitted with the 390 cubic inch big block FE engine, although it's actually the smallest offering they put in this particular car. The bigger 428 was the other option engine you could get, but this is the small 6.4 litre version with a 3-speed automatic on the back. The engine itself was overhauled by the previous owner, but if we start it up and it does start, run and drive, that's not really much use for us because we still have no brakes. Now we're going to refit a new master cylinder and fit new rear cylinders, drums and shoes and generally check over the lines. So with all of that to do, we're going to take a quick look around the car because you haven't really seen much of this and then get on with the work. Now it's safe to say this is not in concourse condition. One of the things we're going to do is fix the paint. We could leave it in the sort of ratty state that it is, just clear coat over it, but actually I really like the blue that it's in and I'd rather the whole thing look the same. Although the bonnet looks really bad, this is actually the worst part, and this is what happens to cars in the northeast of America because all their roads get salted, it builds up and then it rusts through, and it's like this on this panel just in front of the rear wheel and the rear quarter on the other side of the car as well. So there's some fill-in panels coming to fix that. That's going to be a much more invasive job than most of the other rust, which is actually just a bit of surface. It can be cleaned up and painted pretty well. Inside the car is pretty complete, and it does have one feature that I've never seen on anything in the EU. A fold-away steering column to make life getting in and out of the car easier. You put it in park, pull it away, and it just does that. It's not that easy. The other interesting thing, this is the lowest mileage car I've ever owned. In 13 years of driving, I've never had anything less than 6 digits, and this is 58,441 miles. And the last most ridiculous thing about this car is the boot, which is actually massive. It is a huge boot, it goes back for miles, and the trunk lid is enormous. However, for the size of it, there isn't actually that much room. The back of it is taken up with the fuel tank, and then the spare wheel lives on the top, and there are these two big shelves down each side, and that's where the mufflers actually sit. So you really don't have that much space to put things in. So now we've got the car in the air, we've taken the wheel off, you can see this is what this side of the car is like, and actually this whole section here is just Bondo. There's no metal left on this part, but as I say, this is going to get chopped out from about here, front and back, because this is all flexy and, well, yeah, it's not great. So that'll get replaced, but for right now, brakes. Well, it's another day, because it turns out I forgot something very important. I was pretty sure I'd ordered one of these tools before, and I hadn't. So, we've next dayed it here, and this tool is used for removing the springs inside the drum. It's a lot harder to do it with a screwdriver. It can be done, but I really, really wouldn't. This is like £8 or something like that, so buy one of these, it's way, way simpler. So, first job, pull the drum off. And you can see, this is what's inside. We've got the cylinder here, springs to hold the drums on, a tensioner spring, and this is a parking brake adjuster. So you can see here this guide came off, and this is the adjustment cable for the handbrake mechanism, so we can pull that off. So next up we want to remove these little spring clips that hold the shoes in. So these you just sort of push in and then turn to get them off, which again the spring plier is pretty good at. So the other way you can do it is with a big pair of grips, but you need to hold the pin in the back until it comes round, and then it'll come off like that. So next up, we can remove the shoes, and to do that, we just pull them off the cylinder on each side, and it should just come apart in one piece, like that. So on the back of this plate, there are two little bolts, just like this, and they hold in the slave cylinder. Now we've taken those two out and we've disconnected the line, so this just comes out like that. And this is what actuates and pushes the shoes apart. We just replace it with the original bolts. So looking at the old cylinder again, these two rods are actually what push against the shoes from the cylinder, because obviously it doesn't reach that far out. So you just transfer these two over and they just fit in to the new cylinder like this. So now it's time to install the brake shoes again, and we put a little bit of grease around these 6 points here because that's where the pads contact onto the backing plate. And there's one piece we need to install first, which is the parking brake actuator, which pushes through here, and then that evil little C-clip goes back on. So I've just pinched this in slightly just to hold it on a little bit better, and now we can position this up where it needs to be. So this one goes around this side, and this one goes on this side, like that. Obviously they're not going to hold themselves in place until we put the spring clips back in. So we've got new of these little sets here. We'll put those on and pin them back through that way. Now this bar is what actuates between the two shoes when the parking brake pulls. So this pulls in, moves these out, and pushes the two shoes against the drum. So it's quite clever, but it's a lot of hard work to put back in. So I'm just taking the adjuster back out, so I can show you how this goes in. This hook comes around from the top and goes into this little eyelet on the top of the bracket, and that hooks into the back of there. And then this spring goes into the front of that eyelet, like that, ready to connect onto the other shoe, and it will pull them together so that they're all in tension. We've got our last spring in place. I wish we could have shown it on camera, but it was a two-man job. I don't know how people do this on their own. It's insane. But we've got everything aligned. You can see how this clicks round, and this basically indexes through this wheel. That's how you adjust the shoes out, and as they wear, that's how they adjust and keep in the same sort of contact as they go through. It's quite a clever system. You adjust that just through a little slot in the back, and there's a little bung to go in. So we'll throw our lovely new shiny drum onto this and then start on the other side. That just goes on there like that, and that little hole in the back is what you use to tension it, and you just tension it up until it starts dragging. So that's actually dragging at the moment, so we can just take a bit off. We'll have to adjust it again once we actually get the wheel done, do both sides, get fluid in it and everything else, so that'll probably do for now.
Now, while Adrian's been busy around the other side, rebuilding that and filming it all for you so you know what we're up to, I've just been busy focusing on rebuilding, so we're all ready to throw this drum back on. Now, it's not held on properly, it actually gets anchored in place by the wheel, but we're not putting those on quite yet. We've still got a bit more work to do. But for the time being, it's good to have them on just to keep the dust and debris out.
Now, despite having never done drum brakes before, easily the most frustrating thing was finding that these nuts were fused onto the end of the lines, so when you try to spin them, as you can see here, the whole line twists when you're trying to undo the bolt. The inside of the block actually looks pretty good, but given it's brass, it's not going to corrode, but it doesn't look like it's been massively chewed up when the lines were put in last. The rubber hose going off it also looks in pretty good condition, so maybe this has been replaced relatively recently. Now, to solve this, I went on eBay and I just bought a set of pre-made up lines and had them shipped out. They weren't that expensive. With shipping, it was about $50. I could have probably picked them up next time I was out there, but honestly, I just wanted them so we could get them on and call them done. So that's the rear brakes on the Thunderbird all done. Next episode, we're going to take the bonnet off so that we can do a bit of paint work on that, and that will give us much better access into the master cylinder. We can get that swapped out and see what's happening with the brake pipes up the front. Maybe get some fluid in it, maybe not, but that might happen another time. In the meantime, thanks for watching, let us know what you think, and please consider subscribing to the channel.